お前の実力見せてもらうぜ。典型が私に勝利をもたらす。
Man, I just did a video on Genesis. Does that mean we're gonna face off against Genesis again?
Stand up.
Today we're talking about none other than Nova Grapplers. I've done my Nova Grapplers in like G-Set 3 was video, and that was just a long time ago where we took an in-depth look at what it's like to play Nova Grapplers from G-Set 3. And I wanted to do a video like that in like G-Set, I think it was 5 or 6 or something like that, when we got the update for the starters, where if you go second, you draw 2 cards now as well. But that was going to be like a minor thing, so I decided, fuck it, I'll just wait until the next wave of support comes out, and then we'll talk about it. But that's taking me a little bit longer to sort of work out, because the support was not, at first glance, the best, to be honest with you. They're playing the crit version. The support was fine, but honestly all we really got out of it was this Maliaki and the Meteokaiser Victor Stride. And that's kind of about it. And the Stride is decent, just because it does give you an on-attack restand instead of everything being on hit. As you know, the whole issue or joke or dilemma with Nova Grapplers is that everything is on hit of Vanguard, which makes it not as good as it could be, because you push your opponent to 5, which this deck can do very easily since the first wave of support. You just don't do anything, right? Unless you go into Vic Plasm, but you have no way to clear intercepts since you can only on hit Vanguard restand, so you just have to swing, and then you get just 2 swings, and that's kind of it. Whereas other decks can do like 5 swings when your opponent's at 5, stuff like that, right? Which makes this not a very good deck. They're actually playing heal guards, actually, so maybe this isn't the build that I went over yesterday for Genesis. Interesting, but that being said, the support is... that sucks. The support is fine. And the Maliaki does add a lot to the deck, because it gives us a lot of power that we didn't have otherwise. But, let's see if we can do a okay push here. I don't really need this. I have enough pieces in hand to replace it. Because a lot of things now are a little bit more viable, like the Hedgehog is a little bit more usable, just on the sheer fact that you can use the Maliaki to make the Hedgehog a lot stronger, right? So, all in all, in general, Victor hasn't changed, and that's a little bit disappointing, because it's basically the same game plan. We don't do it much better than before. We do it a little bit more stronger, but that's about it. We just get slightly stronger columns. So, for anyone that I guess doesn't know what the hell I'm talking about, Victor is, you know, the main G unit for Nova Grapplers in the Stride era, and we just specialize on just attacking and then restanding our rear guards. But as we are, as a clan, still suffering from the sins of Asmond, that means that everything that we get has been nerfed, so we can only on-hit Vanguard in order to stand stuff, versus something like this deck that we went over yesterday, which can just attack rear guard and then restand, right? That's kind of what we would like to be able to do, but that's not what we can do. So instead, we are very good at pushing our opponent very quickly to like 4 or 5, ideally 4, so that next turn we can actually get in a couple of multi-attacks, and then try and win the game that way. We power scale a little bit better now, as I mentioned, from Maliaki, which says if you have a Victor and something in front of it or in the same column of it stands, both of your units in that column get 4k, which gives a huge AK boost to that column. And then if you use it with Cool Hank or the Victor effect or the Victor Stride, any of those effects that when they stand something give 3k, that becomes 11, right? So that hits over your opponent getting hit for damage and then also checking the trigger. which is why it makes it very good with the Starlight Hedgehog. Starlight Hedgehog is not a very good card. She is a grade 2 here that I've been using because she's very good at just letting you get resources back to hand and also getting you counter charge whenever you stand something that turn. So it just makes it, or once when you stand something, you can't use it multiple times. So it just makes you, stay in the game. Because one of the biggest issues here is a lot of the control decks just completely step all over you. Because you just need so many things on board in order to actually do anything. We do have, good old reliable Angle It and stuff like that to make things a little bit more sustainable. Where they can like restand, and with all the boosts that they get, they swing for 16, which is decent, but that's really not enough if our opponent just checks to one trigger. Most of our turns are dead if we don't have some boosters. So a typical turn nowadays is pretty similar to what we did before. The only difference is that we have the Maliaki and we can go into the Meteokaiser Victor stride here. It doesn't really make a difference which one you go into. Going into the Vic-10 is fine. When we only had an 8 card G-Zone, I just stripped off the Vic-10 because this does the same thing, basically. But for now, we'll go into the Vic-10. Vic-10 just says on hit, stand something, give it 3k. And the stride skill from Victor says counterblast 1 on hit, stand something, give it 3k. I think we can do a little something like this, and then kind of just do the same thing next turn, assuming we survive, right? Which, unless my opponent just didn't get any defenses, which might be the case because they're out 2 PGs, 2 heals, but we'll see if we can get maybe a trigger here to make this a little bit more lethal. Alright, we got a heal, which keeps us in the game, so we're going to power up our Golden Anglet here. They don't check anything, which is great. We'll use Vic-10's effect to stand this, and then we'll use Victor's effect to counterblast 1, stand the Cool Hank, who then gets the boost. We can swing in here with our Golden Anglets. Cool thing, and then Hank can swing in while he's boosted. He can counterblast 1 on GB1 and stand another rearguard. And then now that lets us go in here and swing with the Anglet again. And considering we're at 3, opponent has 2 cards in hand, we might be in a good spot. They have a pretty good soul, so we'll see if they can blow us out. But that's really just the game plan. You just do that, and then you push into 5, and then you try to figure out what to do from there. Before, I was using the Run Bull and the Crazy Soldier, because they were just really good at letting you actually be lethal at 5. And that was what was really good, because Crazy Soldier, whenever something hits, it stands, and then Rumble says whenever something in the same column as it stands, you stand the Rumble. So they basically become like an Overlord where you can just swing in and then keep restanding. So that lets you easily clear intercepts, and if you have something like a Cool Hank, you can get multiple attacks in while your opponent's at 5, which is unheard of for lower grapplers in this day and age. Because you can swing with Rumble, swing with Hank to stand the Rumble, and then your Vic-10, not your Vic-10, your Vic Plasma can swing in for 2 guaranteed PD checks. And if it even does hit, you can even stand your Rumble and try and swing in for another hit. But right now, the Maliaki is just way too good to not play. Which means there's really no reason to play the Crazy Soldier, because they just don't have the space. You could, if you want to be crazy, take out your Stride Fodders, but if we're not on Victor, we don't do anything. If we don't Stride, we don't do anything. Which is why we desperately need the 4 Stride Fodders and 4 Maliakis for the actual power. And that just leaves us a well-in spot unless we decide to not play PGs. I guess it's something we can do. But yeah. He's going to get a crit here. Thankfully, we do have a PG in hand. Otherwise, this would have literally been game. All things considered, we actually can't go into the Vic Plasma here, so we actually get to go into the new Stride. Perfect. That is the perfect draw for that. And the new Stride says on place, you G-flip itself. So you get the ability where when it attacks and hits Vanguard, you can stand one of your rear guards. And if you have GB3, whenever you attack, so before you even hit, you can stand something. So this is what lets us get multi-attack at 5 if we have a cool Hank and the conditions are met here. Because what we can do here is we can go in with Anglet, swing in with cool Hank into the rear guard. Then we use Kaiser here to stand up our Hank, who can then stand the Anglet. So it gives us 3 attacks while our opponent's at 5, which again is something somewhat unheard of for Nova Grapplers post-Asmund here, unless you're playing Blouse. But we can use our last counterblast here to stand our Anglets and not be able to swing for game if they do check a heal, but I don't think they have any left. So that is going to be the game, and that's essentially how you play Nova Grapplers for the last, I don't know, 8 sets. Hate to be just sounding so negative, it's just I'm kind of, I guess, butthurt of how good this deck could be if they didn't rip off its legs. But let's go over the build here. For the starter, we're actually using the old reliable Battle Riser here instead of the Rumble. Rumble, as I said, is great with Crazy Soldier. Otherwise, Rumble is not great. We also got a new starter that its effect isn't great, but it does have the additional effect where it can't be retired, so it's always a consistent booster. It can't be locked and put to the bottom of the deck, but it can't get retired from like Kagro and all those other decks, which is something that I had considered playing, just to always have that consistent 5k booster. Other than that, we have the Maliaki here, who says if you have a grade 3 or greater Victor and something in the same column as it stands, that unit gets the ability of Rush when it stands. So it's whenever, this is always active. So if you have the Maliaki and then you play something, I think if you'd even do it the other way around, if you play something and then play the Maliaki, however you want to do it, or play Maliaki and then play something in front of it, it gets the ability automatically. It doesn't even like do a like special animation, it just happens. But it gets the ability of Rush, which is a keyword for Novas. We really don't use it in this build at all, so I might not even go over it. But whenever it's standby card effect, all your units in the same column get 4k. So that's where you get the 8k. So that gives you really good numbers to actually hit through, which is something that we were really struggling with before. But now the Maliaki makes up for that. The only problem is the Maliaki can get easily retired or locked or sent to the bottom of the deck. So it's very, very bad against these control decks. And in general, we really don't have any tools against these kinds of decks. The only thing that I was messing around with before adding in these 3 Sazandas back is I was actually playing 3 copies of Genocide Jack here, or Brutal Jack, and that didn't really work out as best as I wanted it to, but it was still a decent option. So you can keep that in mind if you have issues with Kagura, which you may or may not. It depends on just like if you manage to get a lot of resources, you can easily compete against Kagura, but if they can, get to a point where all you have is like heals and crap in hand, then yeah, it's pretty rough. We have 4 of the Stride Fodder here. Searches out Victor, counts as a grade 3 in hand when you discard it for striding. And we play 1 of the Energy Charger here just to be able to draw. We don't use our Soul in this deck because we don't play that new triple rare that we got from the event. So this actually lets us draw a card, which is very, very, very pivotal in this deck because you need to refill your board as much as possible, since more often than not, something's going to happen to your board. Just because, Kagura running wild, Gear Chronicles running around, Dark Irregulars can retire your board, right? You have to make sure you have a full board and like a healthy hand to compete with like most of the other decks. So the Energy Charger is a very nice little touch there. Then the grade 2s are pretty standard. We have the Cool Hank, GB1 when boosted, and you attack a Vanguard, counterblast 1, stand something else, give it 3k. This is an amazing finisher and combo extender. One of the only combo extenders we have that does not have to hit Vanguard. So it's very important that you see at least 2 of these throughout your game. Then we have the Golden Anglet here, which is one of our key cards, our prime targets for standing. Because whenever this stands during your battle phase, it gets 4k. And you can do that continuously. Every time it stands, it gets 4k. And then, so it starts at 9k, it becomes 4k, plus 4k, and then just most of the other effects that restand give it 3k, that automatically makes it 16k, which is a really good number to hit. If you put a trigger on that, it becomes 21k, which can hit for really good numbers as well, or better numbers than the 16. Then we have ourselves our backup, essentially, Anglet here, which is the Sasanda, which does something similar, but on GB1 when it stands by card effects. So it doesn't have to be during battle, not that that really matters. It gets 5k into the end of that turn, but only once. so this doesn't scale as well as the Anglet. If you're only standing once, use the Sanda. If you're standing more than once, you can use the Anglet. But even then, it's not a huge power difference between the two. Then finally, we have the Starlight Hedgehog here. When you place this, doesn't have to be GB1. You give one of your rear guards the ability that whenever it stands, you can draw and countercharge one. So this helps you make more liberal use of your Hanks. It allows you to make more use of your Sharks, which we'll get into, as well as the Tribrute, which we'll get into. And it also just fills up your hand, which is really good. And it also combos decent with the Maliaki, because rather than it being a puny 8k, you can actually power it up, make it a little bit more decent. We play 3 of the Victor here, Extreme Battler Victor. So it's GB2 is something that I feel like we might be able to use more often now, but whenever you hit a Vanguard, just stand something for free, give it 3k. And when you stride, you give the stride the ability that when it hits Vanguard, Counterblast will stand something for 3k. And during your turn, when it's placed, it gets 3k. This is basically slightly upgraded Anglet here. This is the grade 3 Anglet, if anything. This is Beast Eater Yamato no Drake. Does the same thing as Anglet, it just has a slightly higher power start here at 10k, but whenever it stands in battle, it gets 4k. Then the last grade 3 we're going to play here is the Dan Shark. So I've been messing around with playing a little bit more control-y version myself, where I use stuff like the Dan Shark and the Stride in order to actually try and retire key cards on my opponent's field. Usually the key targets for this are stuff like the Awakening Messiah, I think it is, that gives you a lot of trouble if you're playing against combo Messiah, because then you're just going to get smacked for a bunch of damage. And your opponent likes to play that early on so they don't overdraw. You can use stuff like the Dan Shark in order to get rid of that. Dan Shark says that it gets Rush whenever it's standby card effect. Rush just means literally that whenever this is standby card effect. But then if you stand it, so the second time it attacks, you on hit of Vanguard, Counterblast 1, retire one of your opponent's rear guards. Then the second effect, if you place it on Vanguard, you Soul Blast, Counterblast, or something with Rush, you will never be able to use this because we don't really use Rush aside from itself, and I guess maybe the Mayaki counts, but I really don't think it does. So you can use this to just be able to retire key parts on your opponent's board, which is why the Hedgehog is good to actually get back that Counterblast for later. Then that combos well with this Stride here, the Meteokaiser Tribrute. So we're actually playing 2 copies of this now, because more often than not, I sometimes go into this just to be able to control the board and make it so that there's a more favorable board state for me. So this says whenever one of your rear guards stands, due to a card effect, you Counterblast 1, give that unit, or actually no, yeah, you give that specific unit 2k, then anything on your opponent's board with equal or less attack to that rear guard, you can choose one of it and retire it. So you can, for like Counterblast 3, if you combine this with like the Dan Shark, retire a bunch of stuff, but it's very just good for getting rid of annoying cards that might give you trouble later on. But more often than not, most of these things have retire protection, so we don't always go into this. It's just whenever we can, keep in mind you do have access to retire. But in general, what we usually go for is the Vic 10 here, which just says on hit of Vanguard, stand a rear guard, give it 3k. You combine that with the Victor Stride, you can stand 2 units. Ideally your 2 rear guards, swing in at phase 3 times that turn. Then if you can, you go into your finisher here, which is the Victoplasm, where you can Counterblast 1. This is an axe skill, so it's not on place, it's not during battle. You have to actively use this skill. You Counterblast 2 G-Flip to get -1 drive, and then at the end of the battle, this unit attacks, you can discard 2 cards, restand your G unit, which is very powerful. This would be more powerful if it was just an easier way for you to clear intercepts. That way you can get in at least multiple attacks. But if not, if let's say your opponent has multiple intercepts and you have a cool Hank, instead you can go for the Meteokaiser Victor here, who says on place, G Persona Blast to get the following 2 abilities. Whenever it hits Vanguard, you can stand something, give it 3k, and then on GB3, whenever you attack a Vanguard, you automatically just stand something. So as you saw, we want to use this, have Anglet Hank with a booster, swing intercepts, swing with Meteokaiser, stand Hank, stand Anglet, get 3 attacks at face while your opponent's at 5. Which is unfortunately the ceiling for this deck for the most part, unless you figure out some way to do some shenanigans or your opponent just doesn't have 2 intercepts. But if your opponent has 2 intercepts, the most attacks you're going to really be able to get at face are going to be 3, unless you manage to like do something with like Cool Hanks or something like that, which is a bit unfortunate. Before we go on to the next battle, let's just go over some of the support that we got. So this is the new starter that we got, the Kabutron. So it just says when you boost and hit a Vanguard, put into the soul, counterblast 1, stand something, get 2k, get that unit 2k. I only really considered it because of the fact that it doesn't get retired, which is kind of nice. Nothing else that we have has that. Then we have this, which is for risers, so it doesn't really matter for Victor. I might do a riser build because I love risers. They didn't really get the greatest support this time around. In terms of grade 1s, the only one that really matters is the Maliaki, because this is for beast deities only, this is for risers only, and this is for risers only. So none of that really matters. We did get a couple of rush cards here. So this guy says he's a little interesting, where on front row, if he stands, he gets 5k, but it's only once per turn. Would have been nice if they had also given him a skill in front row. He gets like at least 2k. Then he actually would have been pretty decent. Then this guy says whenever something stands with rush, you can stand this unit. So it is like a Cray Soldier, more or less, or a Run Boy, I guess more accurately. But we don't really play rush cards, so it's not very good for us. Then the elephant in the room here is the Extreme Battler Abra Rail here. We don't use this. Why? Because the skill says, in one place, if you have a grade 3 or greater Victor, Soul Blast, Counterblast to get 2k, and get the ability that when this hits Vanguard, stand one of your other rear guards and give it 3k. Very rarely will we be able to actually swing into Vanguard, stand something else, and actually be able to hit. So this is really only useful on your first stride turn, or that's it. It's just really useful on your first stride turn, and if your opponent just does not have a lot of damage. If you push them to 4 with your first Vic 10 swing, then actually no, you push them to 3 with your first Vic 10 swing, and you somehow checked a bunch of triggers. Because then what you can do is you can attack with your other rear guard, then attack with this unit, then stand that other unit. But you have to just power scale like crazy in order to do that. The only way to do that is if you have 2 Maliakis and you hit some triggers, because that's just a lot to push your opponent from 2 damage all the way down. After that, this card is not very good, because you would much rather swing at Vanguard if your opponent's at 4 with your Vanguard, not this grade 2, unless you're just grade stuck. So I don't find this very useful. Plus, it means I can't use Energy Charger, which I feel is more useful than having this guy around. The 11k really doesn't matter too much. It is nice if my opponent just doesn't have an intercept and I can swing it at face with this, but I don't feel like that's worth Soul Blasting, Counter Blasting. I might as well just use Genocide Jack or Rear Jack for that, right? So this here is for Beast Deities. Can't even bother with that. This here is kind of the same as the other guy. He just doesn't get the power. But it only works when he is stood. When Master Kung Fu here, when he stands by a card effect, then you get the ability. He gets the ability that when it attacks Vanguard, you can counterblast 1, stand something, give it 3k. Not the best. This is only for risers. And then the last card we got here is the Baby-Faced Narcissus, which has rush whenever it stands by a card effect, and it hits Vanguard after that. You soul charge, counter charge. We don't really need soul, so I don't know if that's really worth it. We got some other random cards here, some other random pieces of rush support that really weren't too usable. So that's kind of it. We also didn't get any new strides either. We only just got the one in the Meteokaiser here. So all in all, playing Overgraph is a bit rough out here. I do still think the deck is, playable. It's just that just about every other deck does what I'm trying to do way better. I just really, the only thing Noah's really have is like the aesthetics of it. They maybe be able to restand units with more power than most of the other like combo decks, because most of the other combo decks, they like overcall or call different units. None of them specifically stand units, so it is unique in that regard, but it could just, I feel like it could just be a lot better, and we're just not really getting that or being able to find a game. See if we get ourselves an extra game here. Murakumo. What? Is this gonna be a VP farmer? Please don't be a VP farmer. Alright, no, this is an actual match against Mokumo. Alright. Let's see here. So I guess put this back. We're going first, so I guess put this back. And let's actually put the PG back. See if we can actually get it slightly better. Nope. More or less the same hand we got back. Alright. This is actually gonna be Murakumo with Magetsu. Interesting. Alright. We don't have Victor, so we are kind of forced to ride the Mayaki here. And let's put this in the back row here and pass turn. One of the worst things about this deck is that you do have to ride your good rear guards, and that you kind of really need them later on. And you have no way to consistently get those rear guards. So it just really sucks. To the point where I've been considering playing like the Seraph Snow ride line, just to very easily put back like a cool Hank into my deck and ride like the pink, and then not have to worry about riding any of the cards that I want. So let's actually play the Angler here, because we do have 2 copies. We only have 1 copy of Hank. And we'll just swing in here. We're probably going to get clapped here. Because Magetsu can push, because they're going to get like 2 copies of the grade 2. And they can try and push us to 4 here. But depends on whether or not I hit any triggers. Which, considering I've just only seen the 1 in my hand, we'll see what happens here. So this gives them 2 Magetsus, Magetsu Breath, and 1 gets banished. They both get boost, and the other one goes back to their hand, or I should say back, it goes into their hand. He's got another one here. This I think can actually like snipe back row. Yeah, it can actually attack back row if it's on Vanguard Circle. So he's gonna swing in here. No opposition on my side. No opposition on my side, and he's going to be able to swing in here, push us to 4, get the draw trigger for it as well. So he's going to have a pretty healthy hand at the end of this turn here, and we're going first, so we've got nothing that we can really do. Cool. And they even managed to set up double intercept. Jesus. I don't even know what to do here. I don't really want to spend any of my stuff here. I guess let's play the Anglet here, and we're actually just going to swing in at intercepts here. And hope that without the Counterblast they can't do much. I believe Magetsu needs like Counterblast 2 to do anything. So let's go ahead and get that heal, which is really nice here. And then probably get pushed to 5 here. Unless I can check some sort of defensive. They're actually going to go into the Shirayuki. Okay. That is not as offensive as I was maybe concerned about. Because there is a Shirayuki Stride. But instead they're going to go into the Blizza. It's always hard to know whether my opponent is just playing a budget deck or if they've got like some, rogue deck figured out. I guess the Blizza is decent, but I don't know why you would need GB2. Okay, so they got a Cradle on this, so maybe it is just a budget deck. Alright, fair enough. And Soul Blast to move to empty. So they probably have the Legion, because that's usually what this is for, so you can Soul Blast, get stuff in your drop. Yeah, they do have one of the Legions here. Surprised they're not playing the Magetsu Legion, but maybe they don't have it. That defensive was decent. Hedgehog might help us come back here next turn. Let's see. Alright, another draw is nice. It's a Sazanda, not as nice. We're gonna draw into that, which is also not as good. We could try and retire. We do have a fuck ton of counterblasts, but I don't know if that's really gonna give us much of an advantage in this match here. We do get to keep our Mayakis, which is good. We don't have to worry too much about them getting bopped. I don't think this has any way to retire. So we're just going to play double Mayaki here, which is great. Throw down this, try and get some draws. I will put this here and then play this. Ping this. And then kind of have to push here, so let's bring out the Hank. I don't really like having to do that, but that's usually often what I have to do is overcall the Starlight Hedgehog after she's done her thing. The trigger would be nice here. There we go. So we can actually make our Anglet pretty lethal here. Let's see. Cool. So we'll stand our Anglet here. We have a bunch of effects that are going to trigger at the same time. And let's go ahead and stand our Hank. Use this to draw and countercharge. And then rush to power him up even further. We're going to swing in here with 25 unboosted. Then we swing in with Cool Hank boosted. Stand the Anglet here. Alright, no triggers. And he's swinging for 43. So that's the power of Mariaki. It just makes you really huge. And Novas can very easily push your opponent from like 1 to 5, which is why it's just very silly that everything is on hit Vanguard, because once we hit 5, it's just like, alright, now what? So we do have 2 defensives in hand. We have Strike Fighter for next turn. So we're in a decent position here. We also have the Cool Hank. So we can actually try and swing in for lethal, but let's see. They don't really have any triggers left. They have 2. And they do have a bunch of heals. I haven't seen any of them, so I don't know if they're playing grid 3 heals or heal guards. But we'll see what happens here. They also play stands. So they have maybe 2 stands left or 1 stand, depending on how their split is. Very burpy today for some reason. Okay. No trigger. No trigger, okay. Thankfully, we do have the PG for that to survive. They only have 3 cards in hand here, so at the very least, we should be able to empty out their hand if things don't go the way I want them to here. So let's go ahead and discard this. If we can just get an Angler, that'd be great, but I'm pretty sure we've gone through all of them because we rode all of them and used all of them. So let's go ahead and G-flip here to get our skill to restand. It is not going to be as good. Well, it actually doesn't matter. I was going to say because the Sasanda is not good if it stands multiple times, but we're only going to be standing Sasanda once, so it's fine. Let's go ahead and play this here. The Mariaki might just make this very strong, especially if we can check a couple of triggers here. Let's go ahead and stand this. So this is actually 24. So if I can get a trigger here, this actually asks for PG. Oof, double Hero Guard. And this actually asks for PG. And I think this also asks for PG. Yeah, because that's 31 right there. So even if they hit the heal here, we break through again and swing in for game. So I thought I talked a bunch of caca about this deck, but what can I say? I love Novas. They're just not treated as good as I want it to be. But in any case, take care of yourself.